From hosting foreign military assets to enabling transnational criminal networks, the stability of Venezuela directly impacts global security and the balance of power in the Americas. Understanding this geopolitical reality is key to understanding why change is necessary.
Truth check. Venezuela has been a strategic frontline, and most people do not understand this. Toppling the Maduro regime isn't imperialism, it isn't about oil, and it isn't just Venezuela news. It's Western Hemisphere power politics, and it directly impacts China, Russia, Iran, and the United States. For years, Venezuela has been framed as a failed socialist experiment, a humanitarian crisis, a drug trafficking corridor. All true, but incomplete. Because under Nicolás Maduro, Venezuela became something far more dangerous. A strategic node in the global sanctions evasion and illicit finance network propping up America's adversaries. Let's break it down with facts. Red. Venezuela is a state-run narco corridor. An estimated 250 to 300 metric tons of cocaine move through Venezuela annually. Senior Venezuelan military and political elites, known as the Cartel of the Suns, have been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice for protecting trafficking routes. This is not corruption on the margins. This is state-facilitated drug trafficking. Yellow. China's grip, debt, oil, infrastructure, control. Venezuela holds the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, over 300 billion barrels. Under Maduro, oil production collapsed due to corruption and mismanagement, but oil remained the regime's financial oxygen. China stepped in. Since 2007, $60+ billion in Chinese loans tied to oil and infrastructure. China became the dominant destination for Venezuelan crude, sometimes 55 to 90% of total exports. This is not normal trade. Sanctioned Venezuelan oil moves through shadow shipping networks, ship-to-ship transfers, reflagged tankers, shell intermediaries, steep discounts, $20 to $30 below market. Why it matters to America. China's smaller refineries rely heavily on sanction-skirting oil from Venezuela, Russia, and Iran, nearly 98% of their imports at times. That oil lowers China's domestic fuel costs, shields them from market shocks, and provides flexibility during geopolitical conflict. Disrupting Venezuela doesn't collapse China, but it raises costs, narrows options, and strains the entire sanctioned oil ecosystem China depends on. That matters, especially with Taiwan on the horizon. Blue. Russia's military footprint in our hemisphere. Since 2018, Russian bombers, air defense systems, weapons, and advisors have operated in Venezuela. Joint military exercises continue. Financial and security cooperation props up the regime. This places hostile military influence inside the U.S. strategic hemisphere, not hypothetically, but physically. Black. The criminal geopolitical overlap. Venezuela now functions as a narco-state, a sanctions bypass hub, and a foreign adversary access point. Drug money funds cartels. Cartels control territory. Territory protects arms trafficking, terror-linked finance, sanctions evasion. That evasion benefits Russian oil networks, Chinese financial systems, Iranian supply chains, all at once. Why America first, meaning removing Maduro, isn't imperialism. This wasn't about invading Venezuela. It was about shutting down hostile pipelines before they reach U.S. soil. The U.S. response has shifted from crime response to national security response, including expanded sanctions enforcement, maritime and airspace monitoring, financial network disruption, cartel-linked adversary financing flagged as a homeland threat. This is defensive strategy, not conquest. Why the media's narrative is misleading. Because all they want to report on is Trump's attack on Venezuela, Trump kidnapping a foreign leader. Because once people understand China is embedded, Russia is positioned, cartels are protected, this stops being an orange man misbehaving again story and becomes a foreign adversary footprint inside the Western Hemisphere that Trump just ended. That, my friends, is America first. The bottom line. Venezuela under Maduro was no longer just a failed state. It was a narco-state, a debt pawn of China, a military outpost for Russia, and a trafficking pipeline into the United States. Removing Maduro wasn't reckless. It was strategic. It was preventative. It was America first. And the people screaming the loudest against it? They're either uninformed or protecting the very system that threatens American security. Faith, family, freedom. Sources and documentation. U.S. Department of Justice. Indictments and prosecutions involving Nicolás Maduro and senior Venezuelan officials. Cartel of the Sun's narcotics trafficking cases. State-facilitated cocaine trafficking and sanctions evasion. U.S. Drug Administration, DEA. Annual National Drug Threat Assessments. Estimates of cocaine transit through Venezuela, 250 to 300 metric tons annually. Venezuelan regime protection of trafficking corridors. U.S. Treasury Department, Office of Foreign Assets Control. Sanctions on Venezuelan officials, PDVSA, and regime-linked networks. Documentation of oil for debt schemes and illicit financial flows. Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIST. China-Venezuela debt for oil analysis. Chinese lending exceeding $60 billion tied to infrastructure, energy, and strategic leverage. Reuters. Reporting on Russian military deployments, advisors, and joint exercises in Venezuela. Coverage of sanctioned Venezuelan oil routed to China via shadow shipping. Ship tracking data on Venezuelan crude exports. Associated Press, AP. Coverage of Russian bomber deployments and military cooperation. Reporting on Venezuela's political repression and economic collapse. U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA. Venezuela's proven oil reserves, the largest in the world. Oil production collapsed under Maduro. Human Rights Watch. Documentation of extrajudicial killings, political prisoners, and repression. Reports on regime violence against civilians. International Crisis Group. Venezuela's transformation from democracy to authoritarian regime. Regional destabilization and mass migration. U.S. Southern Command, Southcom. Statements and assessments on cartel activity, trafficking routes, and regional threats. Public opinion and migration data. UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. Venezuelan refugee numbers, 7 million. Latin American polling showing majority Venezuelan opposition to Maduro.